Tracy, of course, leads the points table at the moment, but if things were to finish as they are now, Paul Tracy would score 14 points for third place, giving him 123, but Alex Zanardi, who's leading at the moment, would have 126. So from Paul having a 3-point advantage, he would actually then have a 3-point deficit to Alex Zanardi. What it would also mean is that as you watch Maurizio Gugelmin into the pits, remember he's not really up amongst the leaders at the moment.
No, but in actual fact, he'd actually moved up into 6th place. He just passed Juan Fangio before making this pit stop, so he had been running strongly. He'd made up a couple of laps on the Argentinian. This will drop him back behind Fangio, but still a great, really a day of what might have been, I think, from Maurizio Gugelmin. There he goes back out into the race, still in 6th, I think probably been 7th position now, behind Fangio.
Great performances from Pac West. They've still got both cars running, and there's not many people who can say that. So they're doing a great job, but Gugelmin, still if he finishes in 6th, he'll still pick up some 8 points. That would be useful to him. Just coming back to the championship then, a 3-point advantage if they stay as they are now for Alex Zanardi. Of course, Michael Andretti won't score, but Gilles de Ferran, who is running in 4th place at the moment, he would come up to 106, so that would move him ahead of Andretti and ahead of Greg Moore. So a bit of a change around. Meanwhile, Marc Blundell is into the pits. There are 39 laps to go. He could make that on 1 tank full of fuel if he's a bit careful.
Yeah, that's awfully close, 39 laps around here. 37, most people, I reckon, thought was about the limit. So he's going to have to turn down the wick on that car towards the end of this race in order to make it just on one more stop.
They're going to have to make sure that that tank is absolutely brimmed to make sure that he gets through to the end of the race. The important thing is careful coming out of the pits on that gearbox. Didn't really light up the rear tyres. You can see that he's being that little bit more careful. He's had the word from the pit crew, but the question is now, can Marc make that tank full last through to the end? The good thing is, from his point of view, he's running a Mercedes-Benz engine, and that seems to have been the slightly more economical engine throughout the course of this year. The Honda is reputed to have perhaps the greatest power, but there's not much in it, really, between Honda and Mercedes-Benz this year.
And Ford, I think, as we showed during qualifying. I mean, there was Scott Pruitt on the pole, so he was running strongly, and the fastest of the Goodyear tired cars in qualifying was the Team Rahal pair of Bobby Rahal and Brian Herder. So I'd say in terms of outright horsepower, not a great deal between the 3 engine manufacturers. Toyota's still catching up, of course.
Zanardi, we've just heard, is coming in into the pits, we think, as meanwhile Gilles de Ferran is putting Paul Tracy under pressure now. This is interesting. De Ferran suddenly beginning to pick things up a little bit and putting Paul Tracy under a great deal of pressure. This is Mercedes-Benz versus Honda. Honda in the Valvoline car, and he goes straight past Paul Tracy, and that puts De Ferran now up into 2nd place with Marc Blundell into the pits, Zanardi into the pits as well. So that means that De Ferran has now taken the lead of the race with Zanardi in. Across goes Marc Blundell. He's just gone across the line. And is Zanardi going to be out safely? It looks as though he is. Look at that! Oh, wow, by there still side by side, and Tracy's retaken the place. Fantastic! Oh, and it's side by side again as Tracy leans on De Ferran. What a battle this is turning into for the lead of the race at this point.
Astonishing as they came round it absolutely side by side through start-finish line. Paul Tracy retook the position into turn 1, but coming off turn 2 again is Gilles de Ferran as Paul Tracy ducks down to come into the pits for his final pit stop.
So Paul Tracy now into the pit lane. We've seen Zanardi make his stop. We've seen Blundell make his stop. So it's only De Ferran who still has to stop from the leaders. And remember, he stopped fairly late on, taking advantage earlier on of that yellow. 35 laps to go in this race. And Paul Tracy gets a quick slurp from the drinks bottle. A little front wing change there as well. You see the guy at the front of the car just twiddling the levers at the front. Lots of fuel to put on. They get it in, and away he goes. Great stop once again from Penske. And as ever, Paul lights up those rear tyres and just provides a smoke screen as he pulls out of the pit lane and back onto the circuit again.
And meanwhile, De Ferran goes past, so Paul Tracy will be 1 lap down at this stage. There is Alex Zanardi in 2nd place, flashes past our booth behind Paul Tracy, but almost a lap ahead of him. So here's Paul Tracy coming down straight away. There is Alex Zanardi coming off turn 2.
Yeah, so Zanardi up to full speed, and now trying to close up to Paul Tracy once again. That should be it in terms of pit stops now. The pit crews, except for Gilles de Ferran, of course. Gilles de Ferran still to make his stop, and you can see the tension beginning to mount in the Walker Racing camp Derek Walker, who has been studying the championship points. He's actually got a sort of graphic system that he's worked out recently, whether people are still in with a shout of winning the championship or not. He studies the form books very, very closely, and the last 5 races have seen Gilles de Ferran score more points than anybody else. Look how close de Ferran is on the fuel. He's got to be in soon, surely. Right in the latter part of his fuel window. They're obviously pushing it to the limit because they want to be able to run this car full rich for the remainder of the race. Gilles de Ferran, who's run a fairly quiet race so far. This is looking very, very interesting indeed. Zanardi is in 2nd position. Marc Blundell is in 3rd. Brian Herter is in 4th position, or is he? No, it should be, yes, 4th position. And Paul Tracy in 5th, because Brian hasn't stopped yet either.
That's exactly right, but no question, Alex Zanardi's in the catbird seat. He's made his final pit stop. He's the fastest car on the track at the moment, and here goes one more lap for Gilles de Ferran. Boy, he's running, he's getting extremely good mileage from his Honda. There he goes, has 219 laps in the books for him, and let's hope he can make another couple of laps before he comes into the stop. There is Brian Herter in for his last pit stop. Routine service for Team Rahal there, the Shell Reynard Mercedes, getting every last ounce of fuel into that car. On his way again, a good push start to get that car underway. No repeated earlier problems. De Ferran, meanwhile, off the pace, coming down into the pit lane now for his final stop as well.
So here we go, the last of the leaders to come in. Careful on the gearbox, Gilles, as he comes down into the pit lane. Comes down to the area where the speed limit applies. Onto the speed limiter. As the engine misfires on the speed limiter as it's supposed to. Into the Walker Racing pit. And now let's just see these guys go to work. They do a lot of practice, these boys. They'll have been at it this morning before the warm-up, doing many practice changes, just as they do in Formula One. These guys are so well drilled as to the work they have to do. The fuel is what takes the time in the PPG Kart Series. The fuel goes aboard and out goes Gilles. Good stop. We didn't have the clock running, which is a bit of a shame to see actually how long it took. But there across the line goes Alex Zanardi. Paul Tracy is just ahead as well.
Just went past there in turn 1, and there is Gilles de Ferran coming out of the pits, and there is Alex Zanardi. So Gilles de Ferran rejoins 1 lap down now to the race leader, Alex Zanardi.
So that's the situation at the moment. It's all going to be played between the top 4 cars. You've got to stay with us. Welcome back to the US 500, and Alex Zanardi is the race leader, and really he is storming around at the moment. He is going so quickly that instead of it being a battle between 4 cars, there are now just 2 cars on the lead lap, Zanardi and Blundell. Zanardi is flying, and instead of the other guys being able to take it steady and then building up to speed, they cannot match the Italian. He is going so quickly, he's just put a lap on Paul Tracy, and that means that Marc Blundell's the only man still on the lead lap, and he's not on the lead lap by very much, is he?
Yeah, he's about almost 20 seconds down, so it's certainly it's more than half a lap behind, but I'm sure Marc Blundell is having to turn that fuel mixture as lean as it'll go. He's got to make 39 laps to get to the finish line. Zanardi only has to do 36. That should be no problem for Alex Zanardi. Ricky there, one of the crew guys, fingers crossed, everything crossed there in the Target Chip Ganassi pit.
There's nothing they can do any longer. They've done a great job down there in the pit lane today. They've serviced this car perfectly well. Now it's down to the reliability factor as 3 cars abreast go past our commentary position. Maurizio Gugelmin was down on the inside. I think Dennis Vitolo was in there. I didn't actually spot the other one.
I think it was Arndt Meyer. I'm not sure. He was back out again. He got going again, which is good to see. So Arndt Meyer's still running. He's actually in 12th place now behind Gualter Salles. He's a long way behind. 24 laps down, Arndt Meyer, of a longish stop, but he is still in the race.
So there you see the positions, top left-hand corner of your screen, with Zanardi and Blundell. Reverse positions to last week in Toronto, isn't it amazing? After such a long race here, completely different conditions, completely different racetrack. One of the beauties of this championship, of course, is the variety of racetracks that we see them visit. From last week, where they were on the tight street circuit in Toronto, here you are, by the way, watching Zanardi about to lap Brian Herter again. We'll put him down a further lap, and he goes through very easily. But from that tight street track in Toronto, where we saw Zanardi making lots of overtaking moves, a very exciting race, to this track, which couldn't really be much more different, where they're running speeds of 230 miles an hour throughout the course of the afternoon. And we've ended up with the same top 2, just the other way around, with Zanardi leading and Marc Blundell in 2nd position. Really is an incredible situation, and this championship just throws up so many so many coincidences, so many different results, but also sometimes you just get something like this where two guys running well on a street track, running just as well on a super speedway.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of this championship. You have to be well-rounded in all the different disciplines in order to win the championship. This year, Alex Zanardi struggled on the 1 mile ovals. He was uncompetitive at Nazareth, wasn't much better off than Milwaukee, but everywhere else he's able to keep going, and certainly a little bit of mechanical frailty perhaps from another couple of cars, and that's put him in a very, very strong position now. He will take over the championship lead if he can just keep going another 20 laps to the finish. But 20 laps is still 40 miles. Ask Scott Pruitt, he was leading this race with 20 laps to go. There's a comparison of the last lap speeds by the various different leads. You can see that Mark Blundell, only 217 miles an hour, has turned way back in terms of the power there, just trying to get to the finish without having to make another pit stop.
Yes, that's a bit worrying for Blundell. If he's not running around at any faster than that, he could come in under danger from being passed by Paul Tracy as we get to the end of the race. He's still got a big advantage over Paul Tracy at the moment, though, I have to say. It's a long way ahead. He's about half a lap ahead of Paul Tracy, but if he's running those sort of speeds, he's going to have to watch out. Not that much slower on the last lap. He's only 0.3 of a second slower than Tracy. So hopefully Blundell will be able to hold on to second as Zanardi continues to pick his way amongst the back markers. And obviously he's being very careful. He knows that they'll be feeling fairly tired by now as he goes past Max Papis quite safely. Papis running in 9th place. Good drive this from the Italian for the Argiro Wells team, the Toyota Power. And Max Papis is putting in a good performance here.
Yes, he certainly is. It's good to see the Italian, a very amiable character, as of course is Alex Zanardi. But Max Papis certainly created a very good impression here since he came to this series in nasty circumstances, of course, tragic circumstances after the death of Jeff Krosnoff 1 year ago in Toronto. But Papis, he has a great sense of humour. He has a lot of flair for the sport as well. He's a heck of a driver. He's certainly impressed this Argiro Wells team, and he's helping them move forward as Toyota helps themselves by finding more horsepower from its V8 engine.
Well, there's Mark enjoying his run this afternoon in 2nd place. And of course, we were talking about the championship a little bit earlier on, but what I didn't talk about was what this would do to Mark if he manages to stay in 2nd place. Well, he got himself just into the top 10 as a result of that win last week, and if he stays in 2nd position here, it'll move him up a few more places in the top 10. It should bring him up into around 8th position. It's just very, very close in that group of cars at the moment. We've got a report that somebody is leaking fluid. It's the Juan Fangio car, I believe, number 36. And that's sad news to hear. He's just been passed by Dennis Vitolo there into the pits. Juan Fangio. Now, is there something checks going on at the back of this car as well as tyres? Or is he okay? Let's see. Oh, gearbox problems it could be. Don't forget, this is a Reynard chassis as well. It looks as though Fangio's got, oh no, he cannot believe it, so close to the end of the race. We've just got 16 laps to go. He cannot believe it. Juan Manuel Fangio just so disappointed. Let's just hope that they can get that car running. We've seen one or two in that situation get going again, but Juan Fangio doesn't look good for him, I have to say. There is Max Papis, 9th position for the Italian, we mentioned just a moment ago, and this will certainly be one of Max's best ever results, I should think.
Yeah, that'll equal his best, I think, from Road America last year. Certainly he had an 11th place finish a little bit earlier on here in Detroit, of course. A good run for him in Detroit on the streets there of Belle Isle. But this is an excellent performance by him. And, you know, not far behind him here, actually, is his own teammate, Hiro Matsushita. The much maligned, one should say, Hiro Matsushita. But he's only a couple of 100 yards behind him. And that'll be a battle for 8th and 9th positions. And not far back from them, actually, also is Walter Salas, who's had a couple of problems earlier on this afternoon, back in the running. Those three are all 9 laps behind the race leader, Alex Zanardi.
Yeah, there's no one to touch Alex Zanardi today. So far, he's got 14 laps to go. 28 miles for Alex Zanardi to record his first ever 500-mile victory. Very much a staple part of the kart series and of Indy cars over years gone by. Sadly, these cars don't run at Indianapolis at the moment because of the various splits that have gone on in American single-seater racing over the last year or so. And unfortunately, this championship doesn't run at Indy, but it still runs here at Michigan. And don't forget, it's got another 500-miler at the end of the year in Fontana that we mentioned earlier. It's a very important part of this kind of racing, and Alex Zanardi has played it brilliantly today. The Ganassi team as well, the Target Ganassi team have done a superb job with that car, and the pit stops have been just about perfect. Chip Ganassi, who calls the tactics, from the pitch counter. As we mentioned yesterday in the programme, Barry Sheene here is as a guest of Chip Ganassi this weekend. I'm sure Barry's thoroughly enjoying this race, and seeing Alex Zanardi with that very comfortable lead at the moment over Mark Blundell.